Her father gave her to a poor man because of a birthmark on her cheek, but fate had written her story in gold. Before we continue, please don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel to support my growth. Thank you and remain blessed. Richard was a man who carried his shoulders high wherever he went. People in the city knew him as a wealthy trader. He had houses, cars, and shops scattered across town. And in his home, he had what he called his greatest treasure, 5 beautiful daughters. Angela, Rose, Clara, Mary, and the youngest, Gift. The first 4 daughters were like walking beauty queens. Angela had skin so smooth you would think she bathed with milk. Rose had curves that made heads turn in every gathering. Clara was brilliant, outspoken, always topping her class. And Mary had a voice so sweet that even their church choir would beg her to lead hymns. But then, there was Gift. Gift was different, not because she wasn't beautiful. No, she had a gentle face, bright eyes, and the calmest spirit among them all. But across her left cheek ran a dark black birthmark. From childhood, people would stare at it, whisper, and sometimes laugh. To her father, Richard, that mark was a curse. He never said it softly. In fact, in front of his friends, he would joke. "This one, no rich man will ever marry her. Look at that mark. God gave her beauty and then spoiled it with ink." Those words pierced Gift's heart, but she never answered back. She was the most respectful of all his daughters. If Richard said, "Gift, bring me water," she would run. If her mother, Grace, coughed, Gift would be the first to fetch medicine. While her sisters were sent to universities in different cities, Gift was left at home. Her father didn't think it was worth spending money on her education. "Why waste fees on the one no man wants?" he often muttered. But Gift didn't waste her life. She went to a local tailoring shop owned by Mrs. Kemi, a kind woman in her 50s. There, she learned sewing, designing, and fashion illustration. In just a few years, she became so good that customers started requesting, "Let that girl called Gift sew for me. She has magic in her hands." Paul was a vulcanizer. Yes, a roadside tire repairer. Every day, you could find him at the junction, hammering, patching, sweating under the hot sun. His clothes were always stained with grease, his hands black with rubber dust. People passed his workshop with wrinkled noses, but Paul never cared. He was hard-working, honest, and content with his little. The other girls in Richard's house despised him. Whenever Angela or Rose passed by, they would hold their noses and whisper, "Smelly vulcanizer." Clara once said loudly, "Even the ground he stands on is dirty." But Gift was different. Every time she passed Paul's workshop, she would smile warmly and say, "Good afternoon, Paul. How is work today?" And Paul, no matter how tired, would wipe his forehead and smile back. "Fine, Gift. Thank you for asking." Those little greetings, those tiny acts of respect, lit a spark in Paul's heart. He saw what others couldn't see, that behind the black birthmark was a golden soul. Angela, Rose, Clara, and Mary, the 4 daughters Richard invested heavily in, each returned from university carrying themselves like queens. They had tasted the city life, and their father made sure they never lacked money for the latest clothes, phones, or perfumes. And soon enough, suitors began to knock on the door. The compound of Richard's mansion was often filled with cars, men in crisp suits, men with gold watches, men who spoke big grammar. Richard would sit proudly in his chair, nodding as each suitor introduced himself. Angela was the first to marry. She married Collins, a businessman who always drove flashy cars and spoke about his international connections. The wedding was grand. Decorations glittered, food flowed, and Angela walked proudly into a new home. Rose followed, marrying Henry, a man who claimed to own construction companies. Clara chose Daniel, who introduced himself as a big importer. And Mary, the youngest of the 4, married Victor, a man with a house full of expensive furniture and gadgets. To their father, Richard, it was a dream come true. He boasted in town, "See my daughters. They will never know poverty." I have joined my blood with rich families. My name will never die in shame. But hear me, dear listener, all that glitters is not gold. Behind the expensive cars and the borrowed wealth, there were secrets, dark secrets. Collins, Angela's husband, turned out to be a fraudster. He lived on money scams and spent recklessly. Months into the marriage, police raided their house, and Angela barely escaped with her life. Henry, Rose's husband, was a chronic gambler. Every night he returned home smelling of alcohol, and soon the supposed construction tycoon was begging Rose to sell her jewelry to pay off debts. Daniel, Clara's husband, was no importer at all. He was a fake dealer who forged receipts. One morning, his warehouse was sealed by the government, and Clara's world collapsed. And Victor, Mary's husband. He was already married to another woman in another city. Mary became a second wife without knowing. One by one, the golden marriages began to rust. The sisters who once mocked Gift, the sisters who once called her the cursed one, now tasted tears in their own homes. The sun was high, the compound of Richard's mansion glittered with the shine of polished tiles. His daughters were lounging in the sitting room, each dressed like queens. Angela was scrolling through her phone, waiting for a call from Collins. Rose was painting her nails, humming a tune. Clara was reading a magazine about fashion trends, and Mary was applying lip gloss in front of the mirror. Gift, as usual, was sitting quietly in a corner, needle and thread in her hand, working on a simple dress she had promised a neighbor. Her presence was always silent, almost invisible, in that proud household. Then came a knock on the gate. Knock, knock, knock. The gateman rushed out, and after a brief exchange, a man walked in. His clothes were simple, rough even. His sandals were dusty, his hands dark with grease. It was Paul, the vulcanizer. The moment Angela saw him, she burst out laughing. "What on earth is this grease monkey doing here?" she said loudly. Rose wrinkled her nose. "Ah, he brought his workshop smell into the house." Clara chuckled. "Please tell me he didn't come here to beg for money. Daddy hates beggars." Mary, smirking, whispered, "Maybe he came to patch Daddy's tires." Gift kept her head down, embarrassed, but she couldn't help stealing a glance at Paul. He looked nervous, but determined. When Richard entered the sitting room, his face was already hard with irritation. "Yes, who are you, and what do you want?" Paul bowed respectfully. "Good afternoon, sir. My name is Paul. I am a vulcanizer down the street. I have come to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then, boom, laughter exploded. Angela almost fell off the couch, holding her stomach. Rose clapped her hands mockingly. Clara shook her head in disbelief, while Mary sneered, "Father, please chase him out before neighbors hear this nonsense." Richard, struggling to keep a straight face, asked with mock seriousness, "My daughter's hand?" "Which of my daughters?" Paul lifted his chin. His voice was steady now. "Gift." The laughter stopped for a split second, then roared louder. Angela shouted, "Oh, this is too much. Gift, your maid is marrying millionaires, and this man wants to drag you into a workshop." Rose sneered, "At least you won't need makeup anymore. The grease on his hands will be enough for foundation." Clara added, "You see your life. Even your suitor is covered in rubber dust. What a shame." Mary shook her head, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Gift, you finally found your level." Gift's eyes welled with tears. She wanted the ground to open and swallow her. But Paul, God bless his bold heart, turned to Richard and said firmly, "Sir, I may not be rich today, but I promise you this, your daughter will never go hungry in my house. I will work with my hands and sweat with my strength to give her a life of love and dignity." Richard leaned back in his chair, studying him. Then, to everyone's shock, he nodded. "You can marry her." The sisters gasped. Even Gift looked up, stunned. Richard continued coldly, "Yes. Take her. At least someone finally wants her. You're doing me a favor. I won't waste another dime on a girl no man of value will choose." Grace, Gift's mother, tried to protest. Richard, please, don't talk like that about your own child. Gift is. But Richard raised his hand sharply. Enough. Woman, I have made my decision. The sisters burst into fresh laughter, mocking Gift as tears streamed down her face. Angela whispered, loudly, from mansion to mechanic shed. What a fall. Rose added, father should give her a toolbox as dowry. Gift stood trembling, her sewing needle slipping from her hand. She wanted to run, to hide, to scream that it was unfair. But deep inside, something strange whispered, stay. Don't fight this. And that very day, without a grand wedding, without fine clothes, Richard gave his youngest daughter to Paul, the poor vulcanizer. At first, everyone in the village laughed. They said, how can the beautiful daughter of Mr. Williams, even with a birthmark, go and marry a common vulcanizer? But Gift, oh Gift didn't mind. She walked into her marriage with humility, respect, and love. Paul's house was nothing compared to her father's big compound. It was a simple 2-room building at the edge of the town, with a zinc roof that groaned whenever it rained. There was no marble floor, no chandelier, no wide sitting room for visitors to brag about. But there was one thing that place had, peace. On the very first morning after their wedding, Gift woke up early, swept the small compound, and cooked breakfast. Paul came out, rubbing his sleepy eyes, surprised to see her already busy. He said gently, my wife, you don't need to stress yourself this early. And she smiled, lifting her head proudly, I am not stressed, Paul. This is my joy, this is my home now. Paul looked at her like she was a priceless jewel. He walked over, placed his rough, grease-stained hands on her cheeks, and kissed the dark birthmark on her neck. You are blessed from the gods, he whispered. Never let anyone make you feel less. This mark, it is the sign that you are special. Gift's eyes watered. Nobody had ever spoken of her birthmark like that. To her father, it was shame. To her sisters, it was a curse. But to Paul, the poor vulcanizer, it was beauty. From that day, their love blossomed like the hibiscus flowers behind their small house. Gift, being intelligent and creative, did not just sit idly. She carried her sewing machine into the sitting room and began to make beautiful designs. At first, it was simple skirts and blouses for neighbors. But Paul, every evening, would come home with smiles, carrying worn-out clothes from his customers, begging her, please, my wife, fix this for them. They will pay. Soon, their home became a mini workshop. The sound of the sewing machine filled the air. Children from the neighborhood would peek through the window just to watch. And Paul, Paul was her greatest cheerleader. Each time she finished a dress, he would clap his hands like a child and say, see how my wife shines. One day, the whole world will wear your designs. Whenever she felt tired, he would pull her close, kiss her forehead, and again kiss the birthmark, saying, this mark is the seal of greatness. Don't you ever doubt it. At night, while other couples quarreled over money, Gift and Paul sat outside under the moonlight, telling each other stories, laughing. Until their stomachs hurt, they shared roasted corn, ground nuts, and sometimes just plain Gary soaked in cold water. But in that simplicity, there was joy. Neighbors began to whisper, this marriage is different. Look at how Paul treats his wife. Look at how Gift respects her husband. And slowly, those who once mocked began to admire. While Gift's sisters wore expensive clothes in their rich husbands' mansions, yet cried themselves to sleep at night, Gift, in her small home, was glowing with happiness. Paul never missed a day without touching her birthmark, sometimes in public, sometimes in secret, saying words that made her heart dance. You are not cursed, my wife. You are chosen. You are not less. You are more than gold. One quiet evening, after dinner, Gift held Paul's hands, her heart pounding. She had been keeping a secret for days, unsure how to tell him. Her voice trembled as she whispered, Paul, I have something to tell you. He looked at her curiously, his eyes warm and gentle. What is it, my love? She hesitated, then smiled shyly, her fingers brushing her little baby bump. Paul, I am pregnant. For a moment, Paul froze. Then he jumped up like a little boy who just won a prize. He lifted Gift off her feet, spinning her around in joy. His laughter echoed through the small house. "Oh my God, Gift, I am going to be a father." "You mean, you carry my child?" Tears filled her eyes. "Yes, Paul, our child." Paul dropped to his knees, kissed her birthmark, and placed both hands on her stomach. "Child of destiny," he whispered. "You were blessed even before you were born." That night, Paul could hardly sleep. He kept waking up to touch her stomach, to whisper prayers, to thank the heavens. Days later, Paul came home unusually early. He looked serious, but there was excitement in his eyes. "Gift," he said softly, "I need to take you somewhere." "It's time." "Time for what?" she asked, puzzled. Paul only smiled. "You will see. Pack a few clothes. We leave tomorrow for my hometown." Gift obeyed, though her heart was full of questions. Why now? Why the urgency? The next morning, they boarded a bus. The journey was long, passing through thick forests and riversides. Finally, they reached a large town she had never seen before. But what shook Gift most was the way people reacted when Paul stepped down from the bus. Drummers appeared from nowhere, beating their drums. Elders rushed forward, bowing to him. Children danced around, shouting, "Our prince has come! Our prince has come!" Gift's eyes widened. She turned to Paul, confused. "Prince? Who are they talking about?" Paul smiled gently, holding her hand. "They are talking about me, Gift. I am not just a vulcanizer. I am the crown prince of this kingdom." Gift gasped. "What? You? A prince? But you lived so humbly." Paul nodded. "Yes, because I wanted to be loved for who I am, not for what I have. I chose a simple life, away from the palace, to find the woman destiny prepared for me." Tears filled Gift's eyes. Her heart raced. "And you chose me. But why me, Paul?" Just then, an old chief priest stepped forward, his staff in hand, his voice deep and commanding. "Because it was prophesied," the priest declared. "Long ago, the oracle revealed that the crown prince will not marry from the wealthy, nor from the noble, but from the humble. He will marry a woman marked by the gods, a woman with a black birthmark upon her face. Only she can bring peace and prosperity to this kingdom." The crowd roared with excitement. All eyes turned to Gift. Paul pulled her close, kissing the mark softly before everyone. "You see, Gift, this mark you thought was a curse, it is your crown. You are not just my wife. You are the chosen queen of this land." Gift stood frozen in the palace courtyard. The sound of drums and the cheers of the crowd faded from her ears. Her eyes darted from Paul, her humble vulcanizer husband, to the old man in front of her, the chief priest with white chalk markings across his face and staff glistening with cowries. Her hands trembled as she touched the black birthmark on her cheek, the very thing that had caused her father to despise her, the very thing that made suitors run away. For the first time in her life, hundreds of eyes were staring at it, not with mockery, but with reverence. Gift's voice broke as she whispered to Paul, "What does this mean? Why are they all looking at me? Paul, what prophecy are they talking about?" Paul squeezed her hand gently, his face calm, but his eyes carried a secret heaviness. Before he could answer, the chief priest lifted his staff and struck the ground. The entire crowd fell silent. The priest's voice was deep and commanding, echoing like thunder. "Daughter of destiny, do not be afraid. That mark on your face is not shame, it is the seal of the gods. Long before you were born, the oracle spoke. A woman with the black star upon her cheek will unite this land. She will be the bridge between the poor and the rich, the voice of the forgotten, the mother of peace. Without her, the kingdom will fall into chaos." The people gasped, bowing their heads. Some shouted praises, others clapped their hands in awe. Gift shook her head, stepping back in fear. No, this cannot be me. All my life, people mocked me because of this mark. My father rejected me, my sisters looked down on me. How can it suddenly mean I am chosen? How can a curse become a blessing?" The chief priest walked closer, his eyes piercing but kind. He raised his staff and touched it lightly against her birthmark. "Because the gods hide their treasures in vessels the world despises," he said firmly. "That which men called ugly, the heavens called holy. That which your father called shame, the gods have called honor. Child, your suffering was not in vain, it prepared you for this day." Tears rolled down Gift's face. She felt weak in her knees, and Paul quickly held her, whispering softly, "Believe him, my love. I always told you, this mark is not your curse. It is your crown." But Gift's heart was torn. She was overwhelmed by the weight of the prophecy. Peace and prosperity to the kingdom. Me, a village tailor, how can I carry such a burden? The chief priest looked into the sky, then back at her. His voice grew even deeper. "Because you are the one the kingdom has been waiting for. Your humility will heal pride. Your kindness will mend broken hearts. Your wisdom will silence greedy men. And the child in your womb will be the symbol of a new era." The crowd erupted in joy. Drums beat louder. Women danced, chanting songs of praise. But Gift stood still, her hand clutching her stomach. She whispered to herself, "The child in my womb." Paul bent his head close to hers, smiling through his own tears. "Yes, my wife. Our child is the fulfillment of the prophecy. You see why I hid my true identity. I wanted to be sure destiny would lead me to you. And now the moment has come." Gift buried her face in his chest, sobbing, not tears of sorrow anymore, but tears of wonder and of joy all mixed together. Back in their village, the news spread like wildfire. Messengers had carried the story. Paul the Vulcanizer is no ordinary man, he is the crown prince of a mighty kingdom. And his wife, Gift, the girl with the black birthmark, has been revealed by prophecy to be the chosen queen. When the news reached Mr. Williams's compound, he almost dropped the walking stick he was holding. His mouth hung open in shock. What? Paul? A prince? Gift? Chosen by prophecy? Impossible. He paced up and down the compound, his pride wounded. This was the same daughter he had despised, the one he believed no man would ever want, the one he gave away to a poor vulcanizer without education. And now, she was queen. Gift's mother, on the other hand, burst into tears of joy. She clapped her hands, dancing around the compound. Did I not say it? Did I not tell you all that God does not create a child in vain? Did I not warn you not to mock her because of that mark? Now see it. The mark is her glory. Her sisters stood silently, their hearts heavy. These were the same girls who had once boasted about their education, their beauty, their rich husbands. But all that glittered was not gold. One by one, they had discovered that the wealthy men they married were not what they seemed. Some were unfaithful, others controlling, others drowning in debt. Their so-called glamorous lives were filled with hidden tears. And now, the sister they looked down on, was royalty. They remembered the many suitors their father had turned away, redirecting them to Gift only to have them reject her. They remembered the mockery, the whispers, the insults. Regret swallowed them whole. Meanwhile, in the palace, Gift sat quietly beside Paul. Her new life as queen still felt like a dream. The royal women adorned her with beads, wrappers of the finest fabric, and gold ornaments. But even in all that glory, Gift remained the same humble woman. Her mother was later brought to the palace, and the reunion was emotional. She hugged Gift tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "My daughter, forgive me for not fighting harder for you when your father despised you. Today, you are proof that God lifts the humble." Gift held her mother's hands, smiling through her tears. "Mama, there is nothing to forgive. Everything happened for a reason." That night, as she lay beside Paul, her heart was still full of wonder. He pulled her close, kissed her forehead, and as always, kissed the birthmark. Gift closed her eyes, whispering softly, "And to think, I once hated this mark. Now I know, it is the sign of my destiny." And so, the girl once rejected because of her birthmark became the pride of a kingdom. Her story became a lesson to all. What men reject, God can raise up. What looks like shame, may in fact be the crown of destiny. The end. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Your time means the world to me, and I don't take it for granted. Every view, every like, every comment, they encourage me more than you can imagine. I pray that as you support me, God will support you too. May favor find you, may joy never depart from your life, and may all your dreams come true. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to support my growth. Stay safe, stay blessed, see you next time. Bye bye.